Secretary of Education Rod Paige believes that education is the key to a child's future. As we look to the future, if we do this right, the greatest generation is yet to come in our classroom tomorrow. Join me, Dr. Gail Gross, as I talk with Secretary of Education Rod Paige and learn how he is working with the President, the First Lady, and others on spreading the message that education is a national priority and that no child will be left behind. I'm Dr. Gail Gross. I'm delighted you could join me today. Dr. Rod Paige serves in the United States Cabinet as the Secretary of Education. When he was the Superintendent of Education of the largest urban school district in Texas, he dealt with the problem of how to improve one of the worst school systems in the state. Today, Houston is the model by which other major cities judge their progress and performance. Before that, he was Dean of Education of Texas Southern University, which at the time was the largest historically African-American university in the United States. Years ago, he told me that he would only take a job if he could really make a difference. He always went from a great job to a hard job. He was my mentor when I was a doctoral student, and today he is a friend. The great educator, Dr. Benjamin May, said, "The mind is and always will be our primary business." With that quote in mind, we are talking with the man who has influenced the mind of millions of our children today. Secretary Rod Paige, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Paige, tell us about this new initiative that you made happen and moved across partisan lines to do it.
President Bush has asked this nation to commit itself to an education program in America that leaves no child behind. That's a big goal. What he means by that is he wants 100% of our kids educated and educated well. We do a good job in educating some of the children in America, but we're leaving a lot of them behind. And so the president is interested in bringing everybody along, and so I'm just privileged to be a part of his team.
And what I know about you is that you think standards are so important, and this initiative really does bring in the importance of standards, not just standards for the public school,
yes,
but standards for the children as well.
We've got to have goals. We've got to know where we want our children to go, and what we want them to learn, and what we want them to know, and how we want them to behave. And we convert those into pieces that we can see clearly, and we call them standards. And we've got to have that to guide us. Otherwise, how will we know if we're achieving or not? Standards are very important. When you set standards, people automatically want to achieve standards because nobody wants to be substandard. So standards in and of themselves can drive motivation. And so we think that it's a very important part of any school improvement plan.
And testing, of course, is a way to measure task mastery and standards.
Yes.
How does this work when people say, oh, kids get frightened about testing and they can be biased culturally?
I think this is a bigger adult problem than it is a child problem. I'm not a complaint about that. But I think it was put in perspective best by a teacher in Memphis that I saw several weeks ago. And she said, I have to test our children to know what they don't know so I can teach them that. Now, you can't know what they don't know unless you measure their progress, and you measure their progress with tests. It's very important that we have standards and then have tests to measure against those standards so we can fill in the gap with good teaching and good caring. And this is a way of nurturing. For us, testing and teaching is the same thing.
In this way, no child is just pushed along as they have been in the past, from grade to grade, just to get them out of school.
Right.
This way, we know what's missing and we know what to put in and put back. So in a certain way, you're bridging the school with the parent, and you're really creating curriculum that the child has to meet, and if they don't meet it, we involve the parent in helping us.
Well, I couldn't say it any better than that. You know, that provides the kind of information that parents need, that taxpayers need, that citizens need, that first can know how the state is doing, can know how the school is doing, the school district is doing, and most importantly, the parent can know how the child is doing. If we know how they're doing, then we can be more precise and more effective in filling the gap that divides them from where we want them to be. So it's very important that we have this information. This information comes from tests. The tests based on the standards that we've set. All this links together. Now, if we take testing out and discuss it if it's something separate, then it doesn't make sense. But it makes a lot of sense when it fits into this system, this whole pedagogical system, from standards all the way down to what we teach the child.
And that brings me to something that we're all hearing so much about today, and I learned a lot from you about parental involvement as it relates to cognitive ability and processing of information. And so you're really involving parents as a very important component of this initiative.
I couldn't think of anything more important than parents. Parents must be partners. Schools can't do this alone. Parents can't do this alone. Schools need parents, parents need schools. And we've got to work together as partners in order to get this accomplished. The parent is the child's very first teacher and very first model. And the school needs that assistance. The school can provide some systematic things and can provide some professional things, but the parenting thing can't be left out if we're going to make that achieved.
And this also creates communication, a communication component, bringing in education from the public school system to education in the family. How do parents learn how to parent, in a sense?
Well, schools can be helpful with that. Schools can have programs, as many schools do, and I congratulate those schools that do, that assist parents in helping, and telling parents what the rules are and what is expected of them. There are a lot of parents who are not accustomed to the school environment, so it's a new environment for them. So the schools have the responsibility of creating an environment where parents feel welcome and they're friendly towards parents, and that team working together can accomplish what we want to have happen.
And that brings me to what I consider the pride of America, Head Start. And you're really expanding Head Start. Would you explain that system to us? What is Head Start?
Well, first of all, we think of schools as beginning at first grade. We say first grade through 12th grade. But we know now that we got to start much earlier. We got to start down in pre-K. And most of the pre-K kids are in Head Start programs. And these Head Start programs can do two things. One is they can deal with a lot of social and health needs, and they can also deal with a lot of cognitive needs. And what we know now is the more and the better they do this, the better the child is ready for school when they get to be first grade. If a child comes to school at the first grade and they're not ready for school at that point, then it's very difficult, to get them on par. In fact, a child who's not ready to read at first grade has only a 1 in 8 chance of ever catching up as far as grade level is concerned. So Head Start and programs that begin with early literacy is very important.
That was something you really brought into the system in Houston. I remember that you created a very early reading program where we were much later than other school districts at the time.
Well, in Houston we have a very diverse student body. We have a lot of language issues. And it's pretty much the same thing all over the United States, in inner city and in rural settings. And so students just need a lot of help to begin. And parents need a lot of help to begin this process. And so the more nurturing we can be, and the better we work together with each other, the better it's be for the child.
And teaching parents developmental issues so they know how to affect their children's learning and growth, as well as deportment and citizenship. I mean, it's just an amazing effort that is really working.
Well, nobody knows more about that than you. In fact, you're an expert in that, and that's and I congratulate you for that field of study, because the world really needs that. This is kind of new to all of us. We've heretofore just thought automatically a kid comes to class at first grade and we just start teaching there. But we now know that what happens before first grade it means all the difference in the world.
And in this new initiative, Leave No Child Behind, you've done something so unique, which is you've not only placed, as we said earlier, standards for the children, but you've placed standards for the school. And if the school doesn't meet the standards, parents can move their children. Will you explain that to us?
The first thing we want to do is enable schools to be successful. So the President's been very generous in his budget proposals to Congress, so the schools can have the resources and the technical assistance and the research that they need to be successful. And if they're not successful the first year, then we go about that again the next year and try to make sure that the school has all the things that they need in order to be successful. Now, if a school fails for 2 years in a row, then the parent should have the right, and does have the right under the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, to go to another public school that is succeeding. There's no I can't think of any logic in tying a child to a school that is failing that child. If the school isn't working well, we should first try to enable success. If that doesn't work, then we need to move to another school where the child can experience some success. And the parents will know about this because this system will provide information to them that they can use to make this judgment.
So in a sense, you're empowering really both children,
Yes.
parents, and
Right.
the schools. You're giving
Absolutely.
everyone an opportunity to work together.
Absolutely, because the number one thing is, and the bottom line is, all of this must result in a child learning. Every single child, not just some of them. We're doing a great job in America now educating some of our children. But the decision has been made that that's not good enough. And the president is asking us to commit ourselves to educating all of the children. And in order to do this, we need everybody involved. Parents involved, schools involved, the state involved, citizens involved that don't even have children in school. We got to work together to do this. The Congress has modeled this for us and showed us how to do it. Both Democrats and Republicans work together in order to produce this bill. This is a bipartisan bill. It's not a Republican bill. It's not a Democratic bill. It's an American bill. And so if the Congress can override their political differences and work together, surely parents and schools and states can do the same. So that's our task.
How did you do that? How did you do that?
Well, we got a leader named George W. Bush, and he's a master at bipartisanship, and that's how that got done. But we've got to also credit Senator Kennedy and Senator Gregg, and the chairman of that committee, who was just masterful, Chairman Boehner and Mr. Miller. So those four, with the president, really got that done.
Amazing. And you, Dr. Rod Paige, because I know that you build really bridges between people all the time, which was one of your greatest assets, bringing people together for a common good. And really this initiative does so many unique things. It's not the same old, same old. You've done some very unique things. One other unique thing in this program, talking about standards for children, standards for schools, you have standards for teachers, and feel that by the year 2005, you will really have 100% of the teacher quality you're looking for.
We want a highly qualified teacher in every classroom. Every child deserves a highly qualified teacher. We have some work to do in order to get that done, but it's clearly a task that can be accomplished. And if it can be accomplished, it must be accomplished because our children need it.
What is a way to evaluate a teacher, and what is the process that is going to happen to get good teachers in the classroom?
The First Lady has been very important in this challenge, and she has worked with Troops to Teachers, just one program, and that's a program that encourages military men and women who are retiring, highly trained and successful military people, when they finish their tour of duty, to join the teaching workforce and become teachers. Transition to Teachers program, another program where people who have gone out into the world and been successful in one career and decide to work a little bit longer after they retire, we invite them into the teaching profession. Wonderful. So there are a lot of different ways that we can get, I think, exciting teachers. And the President's, the First Lady, has been our leader there.
That's wonderful. And also early childhood is a very big part of her philosophy, which is also a very big part of this bill.
Absolutely.
Tell us about this tour that you took.
Well, most of the time when a law is passed, the people who have to execute the law are trained in it, they are aware of it, but there's not much need to go into the general public with it. We're doing this one different. Not only do we want the people who are charged with executing this law to be very much informed about it, but we also want the general public to be informed about it. So we're going across the nation. We're going to go to 25 cities. And then in these cities we hold rallies, we pass out material, or we talk to community leaders. We want to have a groundswell of public support for our education of our children. We want America to adopt this goal that no child should be left behind. We should be a nation that educates all of our children, and that's what we're trying to get accomplished.
And for the future of our country, which we now know is needing a lot of math, a lot of science, and our world has become so technological. How does this bill really relate to the math and the science and the technology education?
We've got a lot of work to do in math and science. Our students are not doing well internationally when we compare with our Asian and European neighbors. And so this bill speaks directly to that. And we solicit the partnerships between school districts and institutions of higher education, our universities and colleges. And the President's budget provides dollars to fund these partnerships so that we can solve some of these mathematics problems. We want to create better curricula. We want to know more about how children learn math and science. We think there's a lot to result from the partnership between universities and colleges and school districts.
This is such an amazing thing, because I know that when people enter the workforce, that's something that's looked at very significantly, the technology that they have to be prepared for. Are they using a lot of technology now in the public schools, a lot of computers?
Yes, we are getting better at that, but I think that we've got a long ways to go. In fact, the thing that we need to do most now has to do with teacher training. Teachers being equipped to use technology and get the advantages of technology. We're growing at that, but we're not as good as we should be. Schools are beginning to have more technology in the classrooms, but the effective use of that technology is what we need to concentrate on now. We also need to do more research to determine how we can use technology best, because it's not our goal just to use technology. We want this technology to result in student learning, and so we need to know what practices work.
And that's another part of this initiative. You're really using in the classroom curriculum that is based on hard scientific research.
Over the past 10 years or so, we spent a lot of money and a lot of time teaching reading. We worked very hard at it. But since 1984, our students have not progressed much in reading. Reading is in the United States now is essentially the same as it was in 1984, notwithstanding all of the work that has been done and all the efforts. So I don't think it's been the efforts that's lacking. We think probably some of our techniques and strategies could be improved. And so this bill is based on the idea that the strategies and techniques that we use to teach in the classroom should be based on science, and there should be some evidence that these techniques work. We want to use what works, because we're now experiencing a sense of urgency, and we've got to get it done now.
Yes, and since 9/11, I'm sure there's so much that we are now looking inward about, you know, the way we deal with how children feel about all these traumas and problems, and a supportive curriculum helps these children in school, where they spend 8 hours a day, to be more secure and more stabilized. These things come from the teacher.
Absolutely. And one of the things I think that we need to be more conscious of is how our young people are experiencing these kinds of events. They see the television images, they listen at the radio, they read the newspaper. They are aware of this, so they need guidance in how to interpret these things. And we also need to hear from them on how they're experiencing it. Students must be a part of the solution here. We can't treat them as bystanders with these world events as they are now. We got to enter into discussions with them, hear their points of view, and explain to them our points of view, and have partnerships and dialogue around these issues. It's very important that we do that.
How did this journey begin for you? How did you get interested in education?
I grew up in a family that saw education as the key to everything. I don't know many problems that my parents didn't tell me education was a solution to. My mother was a school teacher. My father was a principal for most of my early grades. And so I was in school and we talked about schools. When I was at home, we talked about school, education. And so it was just a part of our family. It was what we believed in deeply, and I still do. So, and I think it is a way to make a difference in the world. If you're going to make a difference, helping others become better is, I think, a good way to do that.
And I remember long ago when I asked you some of the defining moments in your lives, in your life, you talked about your parents. One time you talked about your mom. One time you talked about your dad. But now in collaboration, where you are today in your life, what would you think was defining?
I think the defining thing would be my parents really making a big point of whatever thing that you're involved in, try to do it well. Don't just spend time, you know. If you're involved in something, do it well and work hard at it. And I think that that always ends up with people asking you to do more. And so you just move to another thing. So that's kind of the way it's worked for me. I've not had any particular master plan, but the job that I have, I always try to make sure that I maximize my potential there, do all that I can, and to serve well.
What are your dreams for education in America? If you had the opportunity to wave a magic wand and get it the way you want it, what would be your dream?
I think I'd wave that magic wand and say that every teacher, every parent, every school would have high expectations of every child. I think this is kind of a turning point. And one of the things we need to work on in our country is making sure that we expect each child to meet the standard. You know, we don't have low expectations. The president calls it the soft bigotry of low expectations. When you don't expect the child to learn, and the child doesn't learn, then there's no activity involved. But if you expect a child to learn, and you see that a child is not learning, then you've got to seek answers to that problem, and you've got to work at it. So it's very important that our expectation of every child is high.
And that's such an interesting concept, because I think in our culture we spent so long in so many other educational approaches to bring down the standards rather than up, so that we just moved everybody along and everybody got out and kids couldn't read when they graduated. But in this situation, you're forcing the issue that children can't move along unless they're ready to go.
And they should not move along unless they are ready to go.
So you're looking at a real flexible model that allows kids to follow different paths, individual paths, but they have to meet a standard.
Absolutely. Each child is different, and that's why we need to measure each child, so we can find out how to teach that specific child, because the teaching that we're doing may be fitting for another child, but not that one. So each child must be measured against the standard.
How do you educate parents to accept this? A lot of parents actually just want their child to get along and move through school.
Well, that's one of the goals of our 25-city tour, is to get parents involved in the program and to let them know, you know, what the bill is intended to do, and to give them some information about the bill and how they can use the bill, you know, to help elevate their child's learning.
As an educator, I learned the word stakeholder very early on. How does it, and I guess of course this is due to your incredible leadership, but how do you pull together all of these fragmented special interest groups and stakeholders for the common good of children? How do you tell them that it is so important that children get the standards and meet the standards?
Absolutely. We start with the concept that the public school system is for the public benefit. Now, many of us feel that the public school system is for the benefit of the people who have children in the school. But we say it's bigger than that. It's for the benefit of everybody in the public, and this includes the business community, the faith-based community, the civic community, all of us who are in the public. And so the public benefit is for all of us. Parents get private benefit, that's good. But whether you have a child in school or not, you want the school system to be a good school system, because it elevates the community both socially and economically. And so we start with that concept and make sure we communicate that so everybody feels that they have a part of this.
So this gets me to the little red schoolhouse concept, that symbol that you've used.
Yeah.
Will you explain that to us, Dr. Paige?
Well, we have the entryway into our building, a little schoolhouse built for each entryway, so that when you come to the building, you see right away a little red schoolhouse which we think is symbolic of the caring and nurturing of all the children in the United States. And we have a sign right above it that said, "Leave no child behind." And so we want to not only talk the talk, but walk the talk, walk. Everywhere we find a crowd of more than two, we'll talk about no child left behind.
Because that symbol, really, of the Little Red Schoolhouse is all about the future for everyone. That these children that become good students and good citizens end up benefiting the whole community at large.
That's exactly what we mean by the public school system is for the public.
Yes. And in fact, one of them can be an Einstein, one of them can be a Salk, but if we don't make them meet those standards, they could just really fall behind and never realize not just their dream, but the benefit to society.
Well, we've got decades to prove that fact. And as we look into the future now, you know, a lot of people talk about the greatest generation. If we do this right, the greatest generation is yet to come. It's in our classroom now, and so this impacts the future, and we want to do a good job at it.
Margaret Mead once said that we really don't use citizens after they retire. We just let them go off into the sunset. But you have an idea on how to bring them back into the system of education. Will you explain that to us?
Well, of course, the key to this whole thing that we're trying to get accomplished is the teacher. That magic that takes place between the teacher and the student is really where everything happens. And we need many, many more quality teachers. And I think that one of the ways we can achieve that is we can bring citizens in who have wonderful experiences in other fields, who've retired, and who can come back and get into the teaching workforce, because I think many of them can have many of their needs fulfilled this way. Transition to teachers program, the troops to teachers program. The First Lady is our leader in this regard. And so this is a wonderful idea that we think will work wonders.
And that really will use all of our human capital and again connect us all in the way that is beneficial to the society at large.
Absolutely. We've seen this work best with Wendy Kopp's program.
Yes.
Who brought those students in, fresh students in the classrooms who didn't want to be teachers or didn't train to be teachers, but she convinced them to come into the classroom and serve 2 years, and it's really a wonderful program. Teach for America is the program.
And everyone I talk to says so much about that program. It's such a great...
And transition to teachers and troops to teachers can be similar type of, well, in fact, they are similar type programs that get the same kind of results.
Yes. And in the end, we get back to parental involvement. And if you had one last thing to say to our community at large, what would it be?
Have high expectations of our children. Don't underestimate them. Set high standards. Measure against those standards. Monitor constantly. Encourage them. And let's make sure that no child is left behind.
I thank you so much, Dr. Rod Paige. You are just wonderful, and we're so lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Our future depends on equipping children for the future as citizens and workers, and it rests so beautifully in your hands. Dr. Rod Paige, thank you for being with us. I'm Dr. Gail Gross.